Hello everybody and welcome to this playthrough for Pro and Expert Division with various wins for the Acre Ranch here for the Summer Major in Golf Clash the game. Video sponsored by Golf Clash and Playdemic, and before we start make sure that you do hit the thumbs up button, also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. You can get the ultimate tournament guides, by far the best text guides on the market for Pro, Expert and or Master by going to patreon.com/golfclashtommy. Try them out by going to the link through to Patreon that is directly in the description down below. Info box you have on the right hand side for every hole. There I do display the elevation and the club distance adjustment combined with what ball and club type I suggest you to play with. Have in mind that those are all suggestions and you don't have to follow what I do suggest, but there's always a plan behind it. Have in mind as well that I do play with clubs that may be upgraded to a higher level than what you have. But I always try to mimic topspin, backspin, and also in that case landing positions that will still be sufficient for lower level clubs. But if you can't see that yourself, please listen to my explanations, because I always cover that in when I do explain my thought process on that specific hole that I'm playing. So let's go to hole number 1. For hole number 1, we are going to take advantage of the tailwind that we do have from tee. So what we're going to do is that we're going to use 6 bars of topspin, 2 bars of side spin to left. And you can see here now that I'm aiming to bounce over the rough and the sand. And this is something that I would have done with any form of wind here, trying to use the driver with the most power possible and do this type of shot. Max plus 20 is the adjustment. I'm using half a ball of curl, which maybe could be a little bit too much in this scenario. At least we should be going with outside wall left curl on this type of shot. But I'm choosing to go with half a ball of curl, and it works in this case to get to 355 yards. Now, for the second shot, we're going to play with our short iron, and that's kind of what we were aiming for all the time here. Make sure to look to where your max distance are and where your minimum distance are to build yourself an educated guess on what club range you're in. I would like to try to find a spot where the fairway is not bumpy, so I'm moving around a little bit to find that, and if I can, I will play this shot without spin all the time. And you may be wondering why. It's because playing without spin gives, in my opinion, myself more control, and it's easier to read the bounces. I do adjust over the bullseye, and I use 10% elevation, and I play this one approximately 60% of my club. Perfect ball, and we will see the ball bounce on the fairway up towards the green, and when the camera turns around like that, we know it's gonna be close, and we get it in for an eagle on hole number 1. Once again, this is going to be a par 4 where I do believe that if you're going to compete at the top in Pro and Expert, you're gonna have to make an eagle. If we do have a direct tailwind from start, meaning like absolute direct pointing to north, you could think about using a power 5 ball to go full blast, trying to get yourself very close towards the green on the drive. But in any other type of winds, we're gonna bounce on the first fairway over to the next one, then attack the pin with our short iron. For hole number 2, I will give you 2 types of play. This because the rough bump will not be a possibility in all winds. I'm using max right side spin, which is 3 bars, 2 bars of backspin. I would strongly advise you to play this shot with a kingmaker if possible, or any other type of ball that do give you wind 3 as worse, and then side spin 3. Ball guideline is pointing towards the right side of the hole, and I'm adjusting in this case for max plus 15 power 3 ball settings. The idea here is to have the ball to bounce into the rough obviously and roll towards the pin for a drop. The reason I offset right side of the hole is that when we do play in tailwind, we will have an extended ball guideline even if we do play a rough bump. So if I would be aiming straight at the pin there, I would most likely either get it to drop left side of cup or to miss on the left hand side. So the offset there helps me to bring a more secure and a much nicer way to get that ball to drop. A Kingmaker is suggested once again, and I would say that the elevation here will fluctuate depending on what type of wind direction you're gonna have. So don't steer yourself blind in where it says 15%, because that could definitely be different depending on what other adjustment we are using. But for this shot especially, we're using 15% elevation, max distance numbers, and we are using the sniper. When it comes to the bounce over option, or like I'm calling it a bounce over option, it's gonna be a play where if you do not feel comfortable with a rough bump, or if we do have in a headwind from T. But let's take a look at that now. For the bounce over option, we are going to, or like bounce up option, we are going to play with a navigator as a ball, as I do believe that we do have a lot of room on the fairway for making a faulty adjustment or just doing a bad great ball. So therefore I stick with a navigator to not go as ball heavy on this type of play. 1 bar of side spin to the right, as much backspin needed to get the ball guideline through hole. And in this scenario, I do adjust max plus 15 power 3 ball settings for this shot in the video. I would however recommend to play max plus 20, as what we do need to have in mind when we play a bounce up shot like this is that the wind is going to have a much greater effect after the first bounce compared to what it would have done when it comes to doing a rough bump as we did in the first example. And that's why we miss to the left like we did there, as we need to compensate either by using more spin to offset to the right of the pin, or to use more adjustment and keep the aiming at the pin to make sure to counteract the fact that the ball will have a much bigger push from the wind after the first bounce. I recommend to do more adjustment, as that could make us keep us adjusting for the pin instead of having to do an offset left or right depending on what wind direction we are going to have. So hole number 2, the rough bump is definitely the best of the two options, but the bounce up is definitely not gonna be a bad one in my opinion. For hole number 3, I will show you 2 options in how to attack this par 5, and I feel that both of them are very interesting and gives us a decent chance for an albatross on both. We start with the one where I want to call it the layup option, which should be the safer option of them two. And I'm using 6 bars of topspin, 1 bar of side spin to the right, making sure that the ball guideline is pointing straight down the fairway. Adjust max plus 20, and then we're gonna push up to max and go without any type of overpower if we do have tailwind. If we would be having a headwind, I would strongly advise you to use some overpower here to make sure that we're not gonna fall short, so we don't reach to our intended landing spot on the second shot. 400 yards is absolutely perfect, and now we're going to play the second shot with our sniper towards the pin. And this shot is gonna be a bit aggressive, and you obviously decide how aggressive you wanna go. You can either just go with a lot of backspin and just say, okay, screw it, I'm not gonna go with any attack towards the albatross, but I do believe that this rough bump is definitely going to invite us to make a very interesting play towards the pin. True distance, minus 5% elevation. This due to the fact that we're playing a rough bump and the ball will not be as affected after the first bounce as it normally becomes. Have in mind though that if you do adjust down into the bunker, it would be recommended to use a little bit of overpower, or to push up a little bit after the adjustment to make sure that you don't fall short. Because what happens when you adjust down into a bunker is that you will lose distance, because you go from a higher point to a lower point, and that's how it works in Golf Clash. However though, it is definitely a very interesting play with the rough bump here with our sniper from distance. But if we do have a tailwind from T, we're gonna go aggressive, and that chance is gonna be better than what I've just showed you. For the more aggressive option here, it does though require to have more or less a straight tailwind, and I'm gonna use a power fireball to make sure that I will not struggle with hitting the rough on the second bounce. So I'm gonna use 6 bars of topspin, 2 bars of left spin. Again, we're trying to adapt the play so you can see that you can play with a lower level type of driver and don't have to specifically have an extra mile level 9. Adjust max plus a 20, push up to max, and then we're gonna go full blast, overpower, and half a ball of curl to the left. The half a ball of curl to the left may be a little bit too much, so you could maybe decrease that a little bit, but as I'm a great right hitter on my drives generally, I do like to have a little bit more room for error with a great left. Sorry, with extra adjustment to the left is what I'm trying to say. So second shot though, we're gonna play with a short iron towards the pin, and obviously with having a straight tailwind here, it's gonna be a very good chance here. And now you can make a decision once again, as we had on as we will have on hole number 4, is that we can either go for a rough bump, but then we need and require to have a decent bunch of topspin to get there, or we just use backspin and attack the pin like I'm doing here now. 10% elevation is what I'm doing, and I play this one 75% club, and it is very important here that you go to max club and go to minimum distance club to make an educated guess if you don't have any other reference to play with. However though, if we find ourselves in a spot like this in the tournament or in tour play, I would say it's more or less required that we do drop it, and therefore we need to hit perfect. Because if we don't drop a shot like this, it's gonna be difficult for us to maintain a high position or like a top position in the tournament. Albatross here for us all, and I play with a Berserker ball, which is a free-to-play ball, even though you can only find it in the golden shot and also in certain tournament tiers. But you can play with other special balls if you want to. But that's why we have 2 options, because not everyone will have Power 5 balls as suggested. For hole number 4, we are not going to go full blast with this type of tailwind. I'm gonna talk about that though in the end of this video, but we're going to use a power 2 ball, and we're gonna bounce on the second fairway over to the final part of that specific fairway. Max side spin to the left with a katana ball, and I'm using 2 bars of top spin. Adjust max plus 10, then we're gonna push up to absolute max. Once that is done, we shall then apply a little bit of overpower, which not much, so we're using 4 rings of overpower and outside wall curl to the left. You could obviously play with a power 3 ball, power 4 ball, power 5 ball to minimize the need of overpower in this case, but I do feel that we do have a lot of room for error here, that's why I stick with a power 2 ball. Getting it down the fairway opens up for 2 alternatives really, but I'm gonna show you one. And the reason the other alternative is not really sufficient is due to the fact that we do not have the topspin. You can see here that there is definitely a possibility to go for a rough bump here, but we do need more than 5 bars of topspin, so you need to play with a Hornet, you need to play with a Falcon, you need to play with the Runner instead of the Thorn. But it's not the end of the world really. You can use the Thorn by using a little bit of backspin. In this case, we're using around 2 to 3 bars of backspin depending on how close we are to the rough line. We don't want to aim with the first bounce very close to the rough, because that's just an unnecessary risk. 5% elevation through club distance, very important. So check where your max distance are, check where your minimum distance are, and then make a decision based on that. Perfect ball, bounce on the fairway up towards the pin, and it drops for a lovely eagle. As I said in the beginning of the video, I wanted to tell you that you actually can play a blast towards green here, but it would require a good upgraded club. Sure, I do play with a good upgraded club here in this video, but it doesn't mean that I want to use all its stats, and I definitely don't want, in this scenario, use a power 5 ball and try to just squeeze it over the water. In pro, you play often with a pretty low wind, and then clearing the water is going to be a bit difficult to do with low wind. But in expert, with a direct tailwind, you can definitely go over to the final piece of fairway and go and try to aim to get directly to green, which I do believe is going to be the play if it happens in expert. But again, you have a layup option here, which is going to be money if you just do it correct. Hole number 5 is going to be played either with a driver or a wood club, depending on what wind angle we're gonna have. Unfortunately, in this video you will only have with tailwind angle, where we're going to play with our sniper towards the pin. Have now in mind that if you do play with anything else than a sniper level 9 plus, then I would recommend to start with a power 4 ball to mimic the position that I'm having here on the video, because you will have less power on sniper 8, 7. Obviously you will have that on sniper 9 as well, but you will still be in the ballpark. When we do have tailwind, we need to leave the ball guideline short of hole, approximately 1 green square. Otherwise we will come in too hot, and then we do risk either hit the pin or just bounce in and out of the hole, and that's gonna be real crap if that's gonna happen. I did play max plus 15 power 3 ball numbers here in the video, and I would obviously, based on the result with this wind angle, we need to add a decimal or 2 more. What do you do if you do have a straight crosswind or if you do have a headwind? Then I would recommend to move up your position by using then the quarterback instead to be on the top end of the rough, and do the same type of play here. Playing with the quarterback, the only difference obviously is that you're gonna play with a different type of club range, so you're gonna play with minimum distance club instead of the max distance club that we're doing with the sniper. And the reason I don't have a video for you there is based on the fact that due to a lot of attempts on practice, I got this type of wind, like any form of tailwind, so many times that I ended up to just move on to the next hole. But that's why I wanted to be very clear with that, how we wanted to do it in headwind or crosswind. For hole number 6, if we do have a tailwind, we are going to get the ball to bounce over the water, rough and sand to get to the second fairway. The trouble it could be here though is that if we do have a headwind from tee, we're gonna have to just lay up on the first side of the fairway. Then the eagle is gonna be very difficult to get without having to play 3 shots to get it. So we're gonna hope to be a little bit lucky here from tee. Adjust max plus 10 is what we're gonna do, and we are going to then push up to max, and I'm using a little bit of overpower here to just give myself a little bit more distance. Half a ball of curl to the right, and you can see that I'm using a titan. But I would, however, suggest to play with a kingmaker if you do have the possibility, because reducing the wind a little bit more would definitely be helpful for the second shot. The second shot though is gonna be tricky. It's gonna be a tough one to attack the pin, but we're gonna obviously do our best. So we're gonna pack the wood club that gives us the most power possible, and in my case that's the Cataclysm. Please don't steer yourself blind with the level that I'm having. It's just to show you the idea of this type of play. Sure, I was looking for a rough bump at first, but as you can see there, it's very glitchy from that rough, so I decided to just go and bounce on the fairway above the rough instead. 2 bars of side spin to the right to remove myself as much as possible from the rough, and here is where the kingmaker would definitely be helpful. With 1 extra bar of side spin, I would be able to move myself even more away from the rough, so I definitely can prevent myself from, if I'm having a bad adjustment or a bad great right, that I'm not going to clip the rough. 10% elevation, I used in this case 15% elevation for this shot and played it max numbers. So I would recommend to play 10% elevation instead for a better chance to get this ball to drop from distance. Again, this is gonna be a bonus drop if it drops, and if we do have headwind from tee, we're gonna have a very tough time to even get the eagle, in my opinion. Hole number 7 is not going to be an easy play when it comes to headwind or crosswind. In tailwind, we're gonna talk about it in the end, and I'm gonna explain why I don't really have a tailwind video to show you here. But when we do have a headwind or a crosswind, we're gonna have to play just straightforward, trying to, in this case, just bounce over the rough and the sand. And I'm using 6 bars of topspin. Sorry, I'm gonna use between 5 to 6 bars of topspin and 3 bars of side spin to the right. Max plus 10 is what I'm doing for the drive. Half a ball of curl to the right, try to hit perfect. The idea here is to get the ball down the fairway to give myself an open line with my wood club towards the pin, which is going to be the sniper, because we do want to have a good ball guideline for the second shot. 346 yards, and that's totally fine. So let's take a look at the second shot, which once again, as already explained, we're going to play with the sniper. And here it's all about finding a spot where it's not glitchy or bumpy. And I do feel that I did find that, but unfortunately I did over adjust my shot, but you can see the idea of this play. No spin, ball guideline slightly short of hole. We need to make sure that the ball guideline is not through the hole or to the hole in crosswind or in tailwind, because that will mean that the ball guideline would come short. If we do have headwind, ball guideline slightly through hole to compensate for the compressed ball guideline. So, if you do have a tailwind, what can you do then? I don't know if any of you have seen the video that I did from front tee, but you can play a similar play here from second tee, meaning that you use a power ball, which is gonna be most of the times a power 5 ball, where you go full blast, trying to have the first bounce into the rough and then roll out onto the fairway. The reason we don't have this in this playthrough is due to the fact that I played this hole so many times without even getting a tailwind from tee, which was very unfortunate obviously, but I wanted to explain it at least to you so you know what to do in tailwind. And that short iron is obviously going to be much easier to drop an eagle from compared to playing here with a wood club. For hole number 8, if we do have a crosswind or a headwind, we are going to play with our quarterback in complete minimum distance of our club. Make sure that you pack the sniper so you can find that red line, as you can see there on the video, to help you make sure that you are in minimum distance all the time. Here I'm using 1 bar of side spin on whatever backspin that makes the ball to go 1 green square through the hole when it comes to headwind. In crosswind I will still let the ball guideline go through the hole, but just a little bit less, to be approximately half a green square through the hole. Adjustment in the video is gonna be minimum distance, no elevation, power 2 ball settings. Hitting perfect, and it's gonna get me very close. What I would obviously recommend here is to tweak it just a little bit to give ourselves that extra decimal that we do need in this scenario. We only need 0.1 more and we would be getting that to drop. But this hole here with the rough bump works exactly the same really as hole number 5, as if we do have a tailwind, we're gonna go in between clubs if we do play with our drivers, and then we need to change and play with a sniper instead to make sure that we're not gonna have that type of problem to go in between clubs. And then I would recommend to play with a power 3 ball to help us with the distance, so to speak. And I like to play on the top left of that rough patch because it's a very open rough. It's a lot of room, you know, we have a couple of rings left and right in terms of making a faulty adjustment or a great ball, which would make this rough bump a very safe one in my opinion. But again, you know, as people are saying to me, why do you go with rough bumps, Tommy? The reason I go with rough bumps is because it is a very good way to get a drop, and it's if comparing a bounce up shot comparing a bounce up shot and a rough bump, then a rough bump is gonna win all day and every day. So that's why we are very focused on rough bumps to maximize your chance of getting a drop on a par 3 in Golf Clash. For hole number 9, I will give you 2 types of options, one where we do have to lay up due to the wind, and one where we can actually go aggressive as we do have the wind in our favor. So I'm gonna play with 6 bars of topspin, 3 bars of right spin. If you can use more topspin, which I technically could here with XY 11.9, then please do so, because the further down the fairway we are going to get, the better it's going to be for the second shot. But I wanted to once again focus on using a topspin stat that is more general for you as an audience to be able to follow. Adjust max plus 10, I'm using overpower as I do adjust into overpower to make sure that I'm gonna have the first bounce as close to the rough and sand trap line possible there on the fairway, or sand trap line is basically what we're gonna say. The problem with having to lay up here is that the second shot is gonna be extremely difficult to even have a shot to, for the pin, and you're gonna notice that here now. You can see here now with headwind and the tree and sand that stands just very beautifully played by the game makers in the center there means that I'm gonna have to go left of the tree, and then I don't really have the power to do anything else than just using the rough to rough bump this one towards the green, or to be around the green to secure the eagle. Because if I'm gonna try to do something really weird by, you know, bouncing under the tree or through the tree, then I will most likely lose out on the eagle, as I will get stuck into the rough or into the sand. So I tried to play this one conservative, even though it's tough shot to do, where I use the topspin that I do have, try to follow the ball guideline, bounce into the rough, and then roll myself on towards the green, or sorry, the fairway just above the green. Could have reduced the overpower just a little bit though, but I want to rather be safer than sorry. So 10% elevation for the second shot. If you find yourself in a spot like this, or you have headwind from tee, then it's gonna be a fight to get the eagle, which is not gonna be fun, but it's still gonna be very important that you do that correct and you have focus all the way, because you don't want to sit there ending up on hole 9 with a birdie. Now, let's take a look when we do have a little bit more, so when we do have a more favorable wind, if we can actually get ourselves a chance or not for the albatross. For the more aggressive option, I'm going to use the driver that gives me the most power and topspin possible. And here, I'm going to use all the topspin that I do can with extra mile level 9 in this wind, which is more or less a straight crosswind here from tee. Obviously, playing this shot with a direct tailwind is going to be much easier to get the ball to bounce over the rough and the rocks, or whatever we would like to call it. Max plus 10. Push up to max if that's a possibility. And then I'm going with 3/4 of ball to the curl, curl left. And I do clip the rough, and that's totally fine. Not maybe what I was hoping for, but I will still have a shot towards the pin. If you do have a straight tailwind, or more or less a straight tailwind, we could play with a power 3 ball instead and save our power 5 balls, as those will most likely come handy in on other par 4s or par 5s in the game. Obviously, you can play this shot with less topspin than what I do have on extra mile level 9, but the more topspin you have, the easier it's going to be to clear that rough. Now, second shot, we're gonna play with our sniper, and the sniper here is gonna be, look, you know, just look at the ball guideline, because I'm gonna set up at a spot where there is a pretty big funnel. The thing is though, is that when we do have wind coming left to right, the wind is going to push us right, and as we don't have much room to adjust when it comes to by the rough, we don't have many reins in what can I say, in space from where we do want to have the ball to bounce and then to where the rough are. But look at the funnel there. When I was wiggling back and forth, the ball guideline was not moving. And that's a spot that I'm definitely going to explore more and more when it comes to playing this lovely par 5 of the Wiseacre Ranch here. I adjusted max plus 10, but again, I could have needed a little bit more. But the problem is though, is that if I would be adjusted more, I would definitely have a risk of clipping the rough with the first bounce. So what we would need to do here is to either offset on the with wind like this, is what I'm trying to say. Then we need to offset left side of pin with our ball guideline. But if the wind is straight up, headwind or tailwind, or coming right to left, then it's gonna be no problem trying to attack the pin by aiming towards the pin directly. However, the hole number 9, regardless of what wind we're gonna have, it's gonna be a tough one. It's gonna be a fight. But the eagle is definitely going to be, with the play suggested here, the least of your concerns. Thank you so much everybody for watching this playthrough with various Vin for Pro and Expert division for the Wiseacre Ranch and the Summer Major Tournament here in Golf Clash the game. Make sure that you do get the Ultimate Tournament Guide for Pro and Expert, or just single division of them. You can also bundle it together with Master if you want to. Of course, patreon.com/golfclashtommy is directly in the description down below. Video sponsored by Golf Clash and Playdemic. Thank you once again for watching, and good luck in your Golf Clash game.